Hello and welcome. We're live.
Hi.
And Michael,
Yeah,
James,
sure.
which one?
Well, I guess today I go by Michael.
And however, sorry, I'll get into find my beer. 2 seconds. So, how are you settling into Edinburgh?
Good,
Yeah.
all good so far.
And for people that don't know, Michael, obviously, you just came from Iceland.
Aye, moved here from Reykjavik.
Aye.
I've already taken that over.
And yeah, you've like how do you find the transition from Iceland to Scotland?
It's funny you ask, because just the last couple of days I've had moments where I noticed that the transition isn't as extreme as I kind of expected it, or you know,
sorry, just keep
knowing that I'm moving away from Reykjavik, which is quite a unique place in many ways. I wasn't exactly sure how much or like what I should expect coming here, and I'm finding it very nice, very.
And you
very
stayed
good.
well. You stayed there for 5 years. Is that
6?
okay?
Yeah,
I mean that's
a bit over 6.
It's quite a while to get to know a place as well. So you probably have a better idea of what it's like to come from there, and the differences between Scotland and Iceland.
Yeah.
What would you say is the main sort of?
Well,
You've only been here for
yeah.
how many weeks?
It's been well, on Sunday it's gonna be 4 weeks.
Okay, so a month.
So
Yeah,
almost a month.
okay.
It's not my first time in the UK. I've lived in London for a while, and I've always been visiting the UK
Okay.
fairly often, and Scotland as well,
Yeah.
a couple of times.
Yeah, because you got friends here that you visit.
Yes,
So-
yes, Chaz that
yeah,
you've had on here.
Previous
as well.
guest, and she lived in Reykjavik.
for
Yeah.
2 years, I think. Yeah.
Is that how you both met?
Yeah, we used to work together in the
Okay.
same building, not
Okay.
in the same place, but in 2 businesses just above each other.
And then you,
And she's definitely had a hand in me coming here.
obviously, he ended up staying with her, so I guess
exactly.
that's. And yeah, like are you? Oh, sorry for people hearing that. I'm just checking to see if the YouTube stream's live. We're not streaming on Facebook for some reason, but technical difficulties. Yeah, I wanted to get you on here because there's not many people that have. Like you were born, you're from Switzerland.
Aye, I was born.
And somehow you've ended up traveling to London and Iceland as well. You were staying there, and eventually Scotland. So you've seen different sides of a part of the world that not many people get to see.
I guess so.
And yeah, just to reel it back to Switzerland, I don't think I know anyone who grew up in Switzerland. What is that like?
I might have a slightly biased perspective, because I didn't always have an easy time growing up in Switzerland. I was lucky. We already had a wee bit of a conversation about this previously, but I was very lucky to have a very good home.
Yeah.
But in school and just outside of my own doorsteps, I often I guess collided with people's beliefs of what you should be or should behave like or look like, and that was sometimes a bit tough growing up in the countryside in Switzerland, where people can be a bit narrow-minded in certain ways.
And if obviously people don't know, assume that you're gay, so like that's something that's like, or how would you class yourself?
That's the thing. I've never really picked a box for myself. I don't think I belong in just one box, but I think I often just go by gay because that's easy for people to you know,
we've got this far with how people view it, so it's probably just easier just to say.
At this point, it's kind of easier to just go by gay and not really challenge people's. Unless we're in a setting where I kind of feel like,
of course,
no, I need to
explain
put
further.
it as clear as possible so people understand where exactly I'm coming from.
And you're saying that was something that was with you all the way through when you growing up in Switzerland?
I think so. I think if you ask my parents, that's been I think from the very beginning that I kind of danced to my own tune.
And how
it took me quite a while to kind of to get there myself. I always knew that I'm different, but I didn't understand why exactly or how.
That must be tough, though.
And I was familiar with the term gay. My parents had gay friends since I can remember.
Yeah.
But that was nothing that I necessarily identified with very quickly. So that took me a couple of years to figure that out, that this might actually be kind of one of my niches.
Something you're going to take over. And well, like, as a society in Switzerland, like, what is the sort of viewpoint on people being gay? You know,
I think nowadays people are quite fairly open to it being a thing. Even though I think a lot of people still kind of lack exposure, you know, so it's still quite a stigmatized kind of idea that they have.
Do you think that's because Switzerland is quite insular in a way? Like,
I guess so. And you know, I mentioned that I grew up in the countryside. Of course, if you talk about city folk, that's different. As soon as I did start going to the city, and I went to school in Zurich, which is I would probably say, I'm not sure about statistics, but I want to say it's the biggest buzziest city in Switzerland, apart from maybe Geneva.
Okay. Did you go into conventions there?
No, I never. I was always quite a low key person in Switzerland, because I noticed that I'm kind of having it difficult to not constantly explain myself. So I would just kind of keep it to myself until I was in a setting or in a community where it was okay. And I think that started with me going to art school and being surrounded by a bit more creative, open-minded people.
Yeah, of course.
But I always knew that I needed to get out at some point, you know, out of Switzerland.
So that was always your goal, was that you knew that you were going to go somewhere else from a young age?
I suspected that quite early on. And then as I grew older, it became quite apparent that it has to happen eventually. And that's also how London came along. That's like through my studies, I found a way to do an internship in London, and that was kind of my ticket out.
So what's Switzerland's sort of viewpoint of the rest of the world? Because obviously they seem quite cut off. Would you say that?
I think Switzerland is well informed. Really, like, well informed in terms of we have very good impartial media coverage on most of the things happening in the world, but still kind of an isolated point of view, because quite similar to Iceland in a way, because Iceland is maybe more geographically, you know, actually isolated.
Well, yeah, of course.
But Switzerland is in many ways economically and politically kind of in a similar
bubble
situation.
So you went from a big bubble to another.
Bubble.
I was reading up on some stuff on Switzerland, actually.
You probably know more than me.
There's some crazy facts here. Supposedly, in Switzerland, some people still regularly eat dog and cat meat, and it's legal in the country.
Yeah, there is areas. Hang on a second. I need to rake my memory, because I have a friend that I went to school with back in Swiss, and we moved to Reykjavik together. She was kind of important in getting me my first job in Iceland.
Right.
And she comes from a region where cat fur and cat meat is a thing. They have wild cats in the forest though as well, so it's not.
They're just seen as like.
It should technically not be pet cats.
Right. Okay.
And with the dogs, I'm not sure. I've heard of the cats, but dogs, you know.
Have you tried?
I've never tried it. No, I don't think I have.
But that's still like.
I would struggle with cats.
Yeah.
I'm quite a cat.
I don't know.
Person myself.
I probably could eat a cat, to be honest.
You're more of a dog man.
Yeah, of course. But you just associate that with like somewhere in Asia eating dogs and cats. But when you hear it's like in Switzerland, I guess. Yeah. But like you say, if they're wild cats.
I heard it's a bit like rabbit.
Okay, which is not that nutritious.
No, not necessarily.
Some of the other facts here: Switzerland only gave women the right to vote in 1971.
Yeah, I think there is one area especially where it took quite a long time. Wow. I'm not sure when it started. You know, we have like counties in the UK. We have cantons.
Cantons,
and they all have their own kind of legal situation. So some of the cantons were were
quite behind the times.
Quite
obviously.
behind the time, and they're quite, quite rural areas. Quite actually close to the area where they're supposedly still eating cats. So maybe
that sounds like
the connection.
The people that eat cats are the ones that didn't give the women right to vote. But that's another thing. Obviously, Switzerland seems quite not progressive, but informed, like you say. But still, there's these sort of odd rules and laws that you just think, well, this sounds like it's not from that country.
It's a funny place because I think if you look at kind of schools in the bigger sort of bigger cities like Zurich, they have a famous university and a famous in English I probably think you would probably call that technical college.
Okay,
or, something that's on the same level, but it's not academic, but it's technical.
Yeah.
But it's also higher education.
So do you have like high schools and then you go to like college afterwards?
Let's not get into the Swiss school system because it's quite complicated and different to what we know here, and it would probably take too long. But what I was going to say is though there is schools that have quite a reputation for being innovative and technologically advanced, which is kind of funny in contrast to those rural areas where people seem still quite traditional. And
so you have like that sort of I'm not going to say diversity, but like dichotomy of there's ruralness and then there's sort of progressiveness.
I think that's quite extreme in Switzerland.
Wow. Why do you think that is though?
I don't know. Maybe just because some of those regions are a bit more difficult to reach, and perhaps
do they not have
technology and well they do, but imagine if you're somewhere in a valley in the up in the mountains and you might not have the best reception. People maybe don't live such a high-tech lifestyle on their phones at all times.
When I was living in Austria, some of my Swedish friends, they went through to meet their parents in Zurich, and they said it was like an amazing city. Would that be your experience of it as well?
I think Zurich is quite amazing in many ways. It has very beautiful areas, especially in summer. It's a very nice city with a lot of kind of outdoor activities during summer. And you have the lake and several rivers, so there's always nice areas by the water.
Right.
I personally think Basel is a bit more my city. I spent a couple of years there studying, and I really enjoyed it there. People are a bit more laid back. It's a bit more of an arty, creative vibe. Whereas Zurich is a banker city. That's
What did you study when you were there?
Fashion.
Okay.
I studied a bit of film and English in Zurich, but then I moved over to Basel to go to art school.
Yeah, was that something? When did you sort of decide that was what you wanted to do? Were you always interested in fashion?
I've always had an interest in fashion and clothing, but not necessarily in a professional way, because I think growing up in my village, that was something like being an astronaut or something kind of, you don't have that as a very realistic kind of dream job, or, a dream job, but not a realistic option. But then as I started going into kind of art college and the direction of later art school, it started becoming more of a feasible thing. And eventually I decided to go down that road and see what happens.
What did you want to do with it? Like, when you started college and you were like, I'm going to do fashion, what was your sort of perspective for yourself? What were you thinking?
I think my ticket in was one of the big sort of moments when it started becoming a real thing for me was when I went to the cinema and I saw Lord of the Rings.
Right,
and the costumes.
Wow.
Amazing. They had quite an impact on me.
Really?
And I knew that I wanted to do something like this, and I knew that this leads through fashion somehow. Some
of the costumes from that were brilliant though. Yeah. Like I thought, like the cloaks that they all wore, like the hobbits, and then obviously the little is it the pendant thing
the ivy.
It was quite iconic, because anytime you see someone recreating Lord of the Rings, they're always wearing those garbs, and it looks it looks amazing. The green one that they all wear looks really thick as well.
Yeah, thick, but at the same time sort of translucent.
Yeah.
It's quite a sheer fabric function. So
so that was what kind of inspired you to go.
Yeah. I thought that was quite fantastical. Even, especially because the books describe very fantastic, kind of unrealistic garments,
right?
And I think the movie did quite a good job at
I've never read the books.
capturing that.
Is that like it goes into detail with what
it goes quite into detail, not in terms of what it's made of, or
elves'
not
blood.
in a technical way, but it's quite descriptive in terms of what it looks like, and what the properties are, and why it's good or bad to wear it, and kind of comparing garments and armor. It's quite interesting how far the book goes in, but
that's crazy.
Not just with clothing. It's the same with
swords,
with armor and weaponry.
Dragons.
And
I see you've adopted a Scottish word already.
Yeah, it's difficult not to.
So you studied at the technical college for fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you study fashion? Like, what is the sort of course like?
Well, it's a mix between a lot of technical research. You have to go into the archives, and usually you start with something that you're interested with, and then you kind of start digging for more substance to that idea or question, and then you also have to kind of bring in the element of basically forecasting a future, to kind of you're gonna basically create your own vision of a future society, whether it's just the next couple of seasons, or some people also go a bit further.
So you're trying to predict where things are going, or create a sort of a style and a trend. Is that where you're?
I think in our school it wasn't so much about trend. It was more I think we were more focusing on ideas or functionality, or like for me, functionality of clothing was always a big thing. Maybe because
Lord of the Rings.
Possibly. I mean, it kind of goes back there, I was always fascinated with the functionality of clothing, and I've always been very super annoyed with pockets that aren't big enough or in the wrong spot or in my own clothing, and I think my designs were always quite personal in a way that I thought, what would I like to have, or what would I like clothing to function as, and then I sort of started there.
Implemented that. I mean, one of the things that frustrates me, even just in suits that you buy from Topman, like the back pocket will always be stitched shut, and it's like,
that's in many suits that's just simply because it looks nicer on the hanger, and then you're supposed to actually trim those.
Oh really?
threads.
I never knew that. I was like, I thought it was just a closed pocket. So I was like,
I don't know, at H&M they don't do it, but at Topman they pretend to be more like high tailoring, so they do it, but it's it's something you would find at Savile Row. That's like something very traditional.
And I guess maybe fashion, like art, is subjective. Like what you find great or what someone else finds shit is very like dependent on that person, I guess. Really, like
I
art.
think so. Personal taste and kind of.
So what dictates an actual fashion sense and a trend? Like, if who says that that's going to be a great fashion style, or it could just look shit, like art.
Well, in school, you think you as the designer has that power. But then coming out of school, I worked in fashion for a couple of years, and it was quite a rough awakening, realizing, oh no, as a designer, you have absolutely nothing to say. You can do your stuff and present it in Paris, or wherever you're gonna show. But the buyers with the money, they decide what's gonna happen. So if you're lucky, they're gonna eat it up and buy everything, and if it's not your season, they're gonna rip it to shreds, or just start ordering everything in black, even though you never had it, you never offered it in black, because that's one of the things. In black, everything sells well.
Really?
Kind of. It was back in the days.
Okay. That was always the same. Like, so and so is the new black. obviously.
No, nothing will ever be the new black. Black will always be black.
You always seem to wear black as well. Like every time I've met you, you're just always in black.
It's become a bit of a running gag.
You like this?
They teased me in fashion school. My teachers always gave me a hard time because they said, "Oh, that's just so, you know, that's so easy. Don't you don't you want to challenge yourself?" And I always had a big.
Well, it's like anybody who creates. Usually, the person that creates is like what they wear is simple, or what their actual things that they draw can be simple, like what they like. Usually, I'll take it to like landscapers. Like I worked in landscaping for a while. You spend all day doing other gardens, but your own garden would usually just be like you wouldn't have any grass because you don't want to cut it because you've done it all day. So you would just have like chips on the ground or slabs, you know. And I guess that's the same. Like you spend all day trying to create like fashion, like just looking in black would probably preferable.
I always felt awkward when the focus was too much on me.
Right.
I always felt like I want to step, you know, into the shadows, and I was always kind of a backstage designer and not like Galliano who comes out and, you know, celebrates himself.
Do you think there's a problem there with designers being better than their actual clothing? You know, that people are celebrating them more than their actual designs. Is that a thing?
It can be a thing. You know, the thing is, the longer we talk about fashion, the more I notice it's actually been a couple of years since I was really immersed into that thing. So it's become kind of almost a misty memory, or like my references might not be super updated because it's been almost 5 years since I stopped working in fashion and just kind of freelanced myself and went more into the kind of direction you probably want to talk about later.
I mean, and as we know, like in the fashion world, that 5 years is like it's probably 12 lifetimes.
It's quite some time. And it's also because I got a bit frustrated with this kind of you know, the commercial aspect of the fashion industry takes a lot of creative freedom away, I guess, from the creator himself, herself.
So what has your experience been of the fashion industry when you left college? Did you say Paris? You went to Paris, or?
No, I was in Paris a couple of times when I was working in London as an intern in a design studio.
Don't want to name them.
I don't know. I have no idea. I have no issues with mentioning it. Todd Lynn, he's a great guy. Look him up. I worked with him for a while, and we had the show in London, but then moved the showroom to Paris because that's where all the big people are. And then after school, then I went back to finish graduation, and then I went straight to Reykjavik. Straight after, like 2 months after graduation, I was already in Reykjavik. And there we also went to Paris, but I was mostly in Reykjavik.
Okay. And do you think what experience you had of it kind of sort of sickened you a little bit?
Well, it cemented what my worries that I started building up in fashion school, because, you know, as I said, I went into it with a focus on kind of movies and costume and storytelling, and I noticed quite quickly that I'm not gonna find much of that in Paris or even in other cities like London. And then I kind of took a step back and started focusing on creating my own stuff again. That's not necessarily so strictly marketable in a fashion sense, and kind of always try to get, you know, closer and closer to movies, or even I started doing music videos with people in Reykjavik. That's kind of a thing that I did a couple of times.
You don't associate music videos with Reykjavik unless it's Björk, I guess.
Well, if you live there, I would say 80-90% of my Icelandic friends have at least one band or two that they play in. So for me, it's quite a normal thing. Everybody is shooting music videos all the time. But that's
do you think you would maybe go towards film? Like, doing style and clothes for film eventually? Is that something that
think so? I'm still. I haven't given up, but I'm enjoying so much what I'm doing right now that I'm not in such a I'm not so pressed for time. I'll just cross that bridge when I get to it. But it's always something that I'm trying to connect with as well. For example, now that I'm moving here, I've already got my feelers out.
But do you think you can step back from it and just garner experience from living and then apply it to your fashion, or do you have to be always immersed in it for you to be able to keep ahead of it? Is it?
I think if you want to work in fashion, you always have to stay kind of updated as to what's happening if you want to be part of the commercial fashion industry, because you cannot just do something without really knowing how to position yourself or reference. You also don't want to end up copying something, even if it's accidental. You kind of need to know what's there and what has already been done. But I think in general, living or very unfashion related things can be a big inspiration. Yeah, I've often noticed at work in a bar, for example. I worked in bars in Reykjavik for a couple of years, and I've just got a job here in a bar.
A natural wine bar. Just to add,
no, that's not mine,
because Laura will kill me if I don't.
Okay, mine isn't the natural wine bar.
Are you not at Pam's?
Pam's, we have cocktails, but we're not so big with natural wine.
Sorry, I was thinking it was the same place Jazz worked. Yeah.
Oh no, that's Good Brothers.
Yeah, Good Brothers.
Bridge,
yeah. Pam's the one with the stuff on the roof, like everywhere.
Yes.
And all the extremely good-looking bar staff.
Well,
obviously including yourself.
No, but I often find myself kind of observing people, especially in the context of clothing. I saw that a lot in Reykjavik, when you see people coming in from the cold and kind of undressing and then redressing. And I often observe people and how they move and feel in their clothing. And I think I get a lot of even subconscious inspiration from that. So I think you don't necessarily just need to sit in Paris and go through fashion magazines to be a good designer necessarily. You're
just absorbing what your surroundings and you're living your life.
I've always had, my inspiration comes from the most, unexpected places in life.
Like Lord of the Rings,
Kind of, yeah. Or a conversation with friends, or, looking up at the stars, or it can be anything really.
And where you're working just now, there seems to be always people in there that have some sort of fashion sense, quote unquote. Just the people that go in there.
Dress quite well.
I don't mean the workers, obviously, but like the people that come in.
Yeah, no, it's a very cool happening place with a lot of.
It reminds me of I don't know if you've been to Glasgow, but that.
Just briefly.
Is it Pam? Where is it you're working? Palm Spring?
Paradise Palms.
Paradise Palms, yeah. The feeling I get from that place is it's kind of similar to the sort of the hipster places in Edinburgh. Not Edinburgh, Glasgow, like as a whole, because it seems quite unique to Edinburgh, Paradise Palms. But it's that's one of my favourite bars that I went to.
I spent one night in Glasgow, and I was at what was it called? Nice and Sleazy, which had quite a cozy kind of vibe that reminded me a bit of Reykjavik. Yeah. And Palms is definitely one of those places you step in and it's almost like stepping into 101 Reykjavik, which has a very, kind of unique feel for, especially for nightlife advice.
I love Glasgow. That's where a lot of my family grew up. But moving to Edinburgh, I've gotten to see the sort of the older and traditional stuff of Scotland through it. But I'll just always love going through to Glasgow and on a night out, because it's just the type of people you meet and the kind of things you see are not like the norm for the rest of Scotland. They seem to be pushing it slightly wherever you go, and like you say, it's probably quite similar to Reykjavik. So I will have to go at some point.
Yeah, do come by.
So you left your job in London to go to Reykjavik. Is that
Well, to go back to Swiss, finish my studies, and then I left Switzerland to go to Reykjavik.
And why Reykjavik? Why did you decide I'm going to Iceland? What pulled you over that way?
Well, basically it was my friend who, while I was in London, did her internship with Sruli in Iceland, and then she came back and we finished graduation, and she kind of said, "Hey, don't you want to come? I'm going back to Reykjavik. Right. Don't you want to come along? There is is work for both of us." And I just kind of did, because you don't get a lot of paid job offers after graduation. So I jumped at it, basically.
And did you visit Reykjavik before you decided that you wanted to go over there?
During my last semester, I briefly jumped up for a music festival, so I had a perfect excuse.
Okay.
And it didn't take a long time for me to get infected with the Reykjavik virus, so it was quite like love at first sight.
And I think when you went like 6 years ago, that was just when there was a sort of boom for people, especially in North America and America, seeing Iceland as a place to go and visit. I think it was in correlation with the Walter Mitty movie. You remember that one?
I think that was
Adam Ben.
I think that was about the same time. I'm not quite sure. I was never like a big fan of the movie, so I'm not quite sure about like release year and stuff. But it must have been around the same time. I visited the first time in 2011 and moved in 2012.
Right.
And I think Mitty might have been
it came
13, 14?
It came out in 1939, the original one.
Well, the original, but like the Ben Stiller one.
2013 is when it came out.
So just a year after I moved.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned especially the Americans. I think the first 2 years it wasn't such a US heavy crowd. It was just mostly people from all over.
Yeah.
A lot of Europeans, always a lot of Germans, French people, Italians.
Did you ever bump into any Scottish people while you were over there?
Scots, yes. I think because, Scots speak English.
Yeah.
We
try to.
Well, it is English. No, but when you just hear English, you don't necessarily go and split it up into where exactly people come from. Whereas if you hear Swiss German, it's immediately clear, or Italian, So I noticed other nationalities maybe more easily or quickly than Scots themselves, but you could just tell Americans as well. They're quite distinctive in their sound and behavior.
You mean they're loud and obnoxious?
Most of them. A lot of them. I have a couple of really good friends, so I want to be careful because I know that there is an exception to every rule. But
I love
they are loud.
I do love America. I went to high school there in Louisiana.
Right.
I played American football when I was there from a high school team. I just found some new pictures actually. I'll show you in the car actually from when I was in high school. But like I had the best experience of America. Like I think I had the sort of romanticized experience of it. Not a lot of other people probably would have that. I guess when you're athletic, the school gets so behind you, and you get the best out of the school at that point. But I think I saw a lot of poverty. Like if you're poor, you're really poor, and if you're sort of rich, you're really rich, and it gets bigger and bigger, that gap in America, which is weird. But yeah, like there's some amazing people that I met and still have friends today from when I moved there.
Nice.
But I had a rose tinted version of America.
And I have most of, apart from my actual friends, I see a lot of very stereotypical kind of version of Americans. Well, the ones that stand there with a big camera on the fat belly,
the hat on, the stripy jumper and the sunglasses.
Exactly.
I'm surprised they don't have those scooters over there with the fat Americans.
No, scooters aren't such a big thing.
All right. Okay. Have you seen in London? There's been a spate of people getting mugged with scooters. So basically,
scooters,
people on not actual scooters, but
people on scooters.
People will be on their phone, and they'll be just messaging, and people on scooters will drive by and just steal their phone. But it's went from 5,000 to 23,000 of these happening in London from like 4 years ago till now.
But a scooter can be outrun, no? Or like you can the other way around.
They call them scooters, but they're like high powered. They're not actual like the little.
Okay, they're more like mopeds or like the Vespas or something.
It was just the way they've coined it because it's like it's sounds cool, but it is like a sort of faster. I know, but
I was fascinated a couple of years ago when I heard of bike drive-by shootings in London, and I thought that was hilarious. Wow. So now scooter muggings, that's like the next level.
Why would you find that hilarious?
Because I just, I knew of that from
America.
Films and cinema of people driving by in a car, but shooting a rifle off a bike, that sounds quite comical.
Dramatic as well, yeah.
Dramatic, but also comical.
What, and when you were in, like, before you got to the UK, did you have any preconceived ideas about it? And what was your sort of thoughts before you got there? Were they was it what you thought it was going to be?
When I first visited London, I didn't have much of an idea. I knew a couple of places that you're supposed to go and see, but I just kind of came as a blank slate and immediately fell for the place. I've always had a very special place in my heart for London. I always felt very comfortable there, even though I've realized a couple of years ago that it's not really a place for living. It's just too exhausting and too expensive.
Everyone I speak to,
but amazing to visit.
Yeah, like everyone I speak to says it's so good to visit, but you can't live there because it's just it's draining.
Well, you can, but you're not gonna have a lot of your life to live because you basically work to live.
I mean, and I think it was a Vice article. They said that there's sort of a mass exodus of young people from London to say Berlin because it's this like the same opportunities, but the standard of living's better, and you're getting paid more, and the rent's cheaper as well. So, and I think Berlin then had to put a cap on how much people could charge for rent because they don't want it to go the way of London. Yeah, because when you get all these creative types in one place, then you just start driving the prices up, and then that's the type of people that can't afford it eventually.
Exactly.
Did you? No, you only visited for like a week or two. Is that what
Berlin?
No, London. You lived in London actually.
I lived in London. I think the longest was only a couple of months.
Okay.
At the time, but I kind of went back and forth for a while. I had a partner who lived in London, and it was very close. It was an hour by plane from Basel where I studied, so it's just kind of a...
that's nothing.
That's nothing.
I think the same article was talking about someone worked out it was cheaper for him to live in Barcelona and get a flight every day to his job in London than actually live in London and commute.
Doesn't surprise me actually. I immediately believe that. It's so extortionate there.
And he was living the life of luxury in Barcelona. And that could all change, with the Brexit, Brexit.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. Anyway, so yeah, you moved to Reykjavik in Iceland. I was thinking about this week because I like visualizing when people first sort of just get to a place and the sort of, because I think that sets up how people view that place for the whole time they're there. When you go to a new place, is that those first encounters when you get off the plane, the first bar, the first hotel, and that gives a sort of a general vibe for where you are. And what was your feelings when you got off the plane? I think you'd been there for a little bit anyway. Is that what you said? But
in Reykjavik?
Yeah.
Well, the first time I visited, I went for a week, and it was Iceland Airwaves, so it was a big festival. The town is very busy, and it's very extraordinary, kind of. And then the next time I went back was in early spring, but it was still quite dark and very snowy. And I went back to actually, go and set out the thing. I had my job interview, and I basically went to the studio to see if I'm gonna get a job.
Get what it takes.
So my first two visits were quite different because it was much more quiet in town and much more sleepy and kind of hibernating. And then when I eventually moved back was just when spring or down here it would be summer, but up there it was still kind of spring. Just started kicking in, so it was there was much more daylight, and people started living outside much more. And so my first couple of times in Reykjavik already were quite different from each other, and that's also kind of what happened in the next 6 years. It's a city that keeps changing, or you keep coming across new things. Even though after 6 years, I kind of felt like I'm suddenly starting to be caught in a bit of a loop.
Yeah.
But not because it's boring, but it's just it's a small place, and you keep bumping into the same people or similar situations.
And it feels very, I mean, I'm guessing it feels very seasonal. Like you have the summer, a summer, and then it goes to winter, you know, and it's kind of just rinse and repeat. So you feel like you're caught in that sort of cycle.
In a way, yes. Even though I think for me, what kind of makes it interesting or keeps it interesting is the people. The people I eventually met. That was just what kept me. What kept me there for so long. I've seen a lot of people coming and going and not lasting very long, and I was quite stuck there because I immediately had a very amazing social network of very exciting people that I don't think. I think Reykjavik has quite a high density of interesting people doing interesting things.
Well, you have to be interesting to move to Reykjavik. You know, you're not just going to be someone.
I wasn't that exciting.
I wouldn't say that. Like I think it must attract people who are going for a reason and to do something quite cool. You know, you're not going to just go there and work on a farm, I guess. Not that that's a bad thing.
You have quite a lot of people actually coming through Reykjavik and then moving straight to the countryside. I wasn't there for that. I wasn't there for working in a farm.
So what was the purpose of you moving to Reykjavik? Like, what were you doing when you got there?
Well, it was my job, my design job. And then I think the first 2 years I was basically day and night in that studio. So I didn't actually get to experience that much of the city. We maybe went out once a week, but you know, for a couple of hours.
And so what was your job there?
I was basically one of the studio managers. I took care of the administration and buying and selling. I was dealing with all the suppliers and then also with all the potential customers in the future, whereas my colleague Flavia, she was a studio manager, but more in terms of taking care of the technical aspect of the in-house production and the interns and also the design process.
It was it a nice job that you had? Was it like one you had the whole time that you worked in?
I was always in the same position for the whole 2 years I was there. Yeah.
And how did you end up going into, like, obviously, one of the reasons I want you on here is, like, you got into, or I don't know if you were, like, how would you explain it? Because I don't know.
I'm a drag queen.
No, of course.
It's as simple as you can put it.
I'm trying to figure out whether it's like it was a scene that was already there before you went there, or it was something that you helped to create with other people.
Oh, I have to be careful now. No, just because I don't want to take too much credit.
Yeah.
Or like, I was there from kind of the beginning of a second wave of I think there has been quite a big scene of queer performance and drag in the later 90s and early 2000s, I want to say. Even though, you know, I wasn't there for any of it, so I'm
Iceland.
I'm just hearing I'm saying what I hear from people. But around 2015, that must have been when one of my sisters, she won the national drag competition around during Pride. And she thought there isn't enough happening on a regular basis. There was just really that one drag competition once a year. And
like random events sort of thing?
Not that much, really. So she decided to use her kind of 15 minutes of fame to put something else on the map. And sat down with a school friend of hers, and they kind of founded the queer variety show that we then continued doing for 2.5 years. It's still going, and we've just exploded all over the place. And by now they have 3 to 4 monthly shows in different places. So many artists that they cannot just put them in just one show. There had to be some, you know, split off groups.
Was it something that you were doing before you arrived, or is it just you got there and someone asked you to come and, you know, perform?
I had never really done drag before. I went to costume parties in sort of what you could probably consider drag before, but not
Rocky Horror Show type
kind
stuff.
of. I once went as Courtney Love, and my female friend was Kurt, and
Courtney Love looks like she's always in drag. So.
Yeah, she's actually one of my bigger inspirations, just because I think she's so charismatic and kind of larger than life, you know.
And a murderer. I'm joking. Don't sue me. I'm just
I like people with skeletons in their closet. Let's just say that. I think
she's
it's fascinating.
Might have an actual skeleton in her closet.
Possibly. A lot of interesting people do. Dorian Corey. I was just watching Paris is Burning last night. That's a big documentary for people doing what I do. It's like about the 80s, 70s and 80s ballroom and drag trans scene in New York City, and one of the bigger personalities in the movie is I'm not sure if she's transsexual or if it's a drag queen. But you know, back then the boundaries sometimes blurred quite much, and when she died, they found a box with a skeleton in her actual closet of a mummified body.
Do you think that's where the term came from?
No. I think the term must go back further, but it's quite hilarious.
That's insane. So, had it been something that you'd exposed to before you came to Reykjavik? Like
I was always fascinated with drag. I was always, and in school, in fashion school, I was always going on about blurring the boundaries between genders. I was always fascinated by, not by unisex fashion, but more like unisex itself is kind of boring because it's just very bland, so it would fit anyone. Whereas I wanted to, that's also why I started doing menswear, because I started with women's and I felt like there isn't that many boundaries that you can still push, because so much has been done already. You know, even back in the 40s, Marlene Dietrich was running around in suits and blowing everybody's minds. and nowadays, I felt there is much more to do still in menswear.
Right. Okay.
And I started kind of playing around with men in dresses, but not as transvestites or cross-dressing, but more like just pushing the boundaries of what people think is acceptable for a man to wear in everyday life.
Yeah.
And then when I started getting interested in drag, I've always had my own kind of androgynous approach to it. I refused to shave from the beginning, and like I'm always kind of, I like to keep blurring the boundaries, even as a drag artist. Whereas other people go, you know, much more of a 100% transformation from male to female, or the other way around.
To be quote unquote a convincing female.
Yeah,
like but that just is like
illusion. Sort of, is much. There isn't that much illusion with me. I'm not really.
Was there not
tricking anyone?
Someone who was on one of these X Factor type shows, and it was someone who grew their beard while, you know, doing drag as well. On
I think you mean Conchita, the Austrian.
Yeah, that's
the Austrian.
Yeah, was it
queen.
on
she
Eurovision?
She ended up winning Eurovision for Austria a couple of years ago. And I thought that was quite fascinating because bearded lady. At first, I remember when I first saw her in papers, I didn't understand, and I was like, "What the fuck? Why?" But then, as she became a bit more exposed in media and had more of a platform to actually explain herself and her standpoint, I started immediately being very fascinated.
Me too.
But yeah, she was on like the Austrian Idol.
Yeah, and I remember when I first saw her it was so jarring to see someone who, you know, physically looked almost model-like and was, you know...
Yeah, she's very beautiful and then just has a very thick
but like
very
a very
manly
like
beard.
A very like model-like beard. Like it's very thick and it's very like, you know, well manicured, so to speak. You know.
I think if I remember it correctly, in the beginning, she also filled it in with a lot of makeup.
Oh no
so
way!
It wasn't just trimmed. It was also, you know, filled in to make it look even starker.
She's been fake newsing us all along.
Well, by now I think she's just going. She's actually buffed up quite a lot.
Wow.
I'm still following her on social media, and by now she has much more of an androgynous look. 'Cause as a boy, she has become more buff and kind of muscly. And I think now she's stopped using that much makeup and kind of plays into that blur thing. But
is that something that more people are trying to do? Is fill that blurred gap between?
I don't know.
Between what is considered male and female.
I still think there isn't enough out there personally, but I see more and more people playing into that corner at least. Especially also in Reykjavik, we have a lot of people that are somewhere on the spectrum.
Okay.
And I thought that was always quite interesting to be in a community where I'm not the only one.
So you go there, and obviously, is that when you did your first show? Was
on
it
stage?
was it in Reykjavik?
Yeah, that was. I started going to those shows as a just, you know, audience member, and then I started showing up in makeup, but just sitting in a dark corner. And then it didn't take them a lot of time to kind of notice me, even though I sat in a dark corner and pretended to be shy, until they actually picked me out of the audience and started talking to me and suggesting I come and join them. And I was very adamant about not wanting to be on stage, and I'm too shy for that.
Where was that coming from?
I was genuinely feeling too shy for it, because
Do you think it was like a big step into something that would mean this is me doing this? Like if I go up on stage.
I wasn't very scared of what people think, but it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier as a, you know, kind of a shy designer that's more backstage. I always felt like I'm not necessarily the stage person, but then I couldn't keep them for a long time from literally pushing me out on stage. And then I also kind of noticed that that's one of the fascinating things about drag. I have the possibility to leave Michael backstage and let him be the sort of shy creative mastermind behind the whole thing, whereas James goes out and takes, you know,
center
the applause
stage.
And she likes the attention that Michael is a bit too self-conscious to enjoy.
I found it interesting when I first started talking to you at Jazz's party, when you start saying that you'd worked in fashion and then you were doing drag shows in Iceland. When I tried to find you on Instagram to like, because my idea was that I was going to have you on the show, I was quite impressed that when I looked on it, it wasn't like some sort of a female's name, like your alter ego. It was like JamestheCreature. Like it stood out to me for some reason, and I can't explain why. I thought it was cool. It was just like, it's blurring the lines even more, you know, with what you're trying to do. And I thought it was a great sort of thing. And why did you go down that road with JamestheCreature?
Like many things, it was kind of a string of coincidences. When I started getting involved with, you know, in terms of not just showing up to the shows as audience member, but getting more involved with helping backstage. I at first I was just someone kind of helping out with costumes and makeup backstage and
sewing.
I didn't always bring my sewing machine, so I didn't want to end up as like the sweatshop.
I don't have my sewing machine with me today,
but I didn't have any like artist names, so it was just Michael. But then as we started getting a bit more, you know, when I started showing up in videos and things and even kind
stuff.
of jumping out on stage now and then, it became apparent that I'm gonna need something like a name, because I didn't want to just go by Michael. And then basically one of the queens that ended up becoming kind of my drag mom, she couldn't remember my name and kept calling me James. And it was like, she's from Hungary and she has this thick Hungarian accent, and I just cannot remember your name. I just want to call you James. And I had always liked the name James, and one of my experimental like fashion labels back in school was called Skeleton James.
Wow.
For whatever reason, I don't even know why that came to be. And I just thought that was so funny that she wants to call me James.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I guess that's it.
You're going to have to go
and
with
then
James.
At some point, kind of the creature followed because she's obviously not like a princess or she's more of a creature of the night somehow.
Creature of the night. That's funny. I always just assumed that your name was James when I found you on Instagram.
A lot of people do.
I was like, oh, James is not here. And Jazz was like, who are you talking about, when I was at her work? And I was like, oh, James is like I want to have him on the podcast. And she's like, I don't know who you're talking about. And I was like, she's like, oh, Michael.
I'm quite used to it though. In Reykjavik, a lot of people just called me James in like off stage as well.
Now, how do you piece it together? Is it a different part of your personality? Like, how do you quantify it? Like James and Michael, is it one person and you just have like that side of you, or is it something that came out of you from doing this, or is it something that's always been in you?
It's tricky because I think about this a lot, and to this day I haven't really found like a very quick answer that works every time. But I'm sure that it's not just. I see that with a lot of other artists that I've been working with or that I've followed, that they have a very strict distinction between their private self and the character that they play, and it's almost like their escape, you know, into this character. Whereas I never felt such a need to escape from my reality, but more like present an augmented reality, or it's like I always try to explain it. It's like an Insta filter over myself, or
just like the best sort of version.
You know, that as in Michael's shy and stays backstage, and James goes out and does all the things that Michael's too shy to, or to do, or too self-conscious to kind of go out and enjoy it. Michael can maybe do the same thing, but he's gonna stand there and like he's caught up in his head, whereas James can go and enjoy the applause and be the grand lady.
When you're on stage, do you feel like there is a part of you watching yourself doing it?
Yes, in a way. Sometimes more than others, and sometimes you just completely lose it. Sometimes I come off stage and I almost don't remember what just happened, and I want to go back and just have it again, and don't have a feeling for how it was until I actually see a video of it. Even though no matter what people say, I'm like, somebody show me a video, I need to know how I done. And other times you're a bit more maybe aware of it, so you're constantly kind of observing yourself. But it always depends how much you've you know, prepared, how automatic the whole number comes, or if you're still kind of unsure and you need to be in control of things, or also how much you have had to drink or smoke before. And you know, it's like some nights you're a bit more organic, and sometimes you're a bit more kind of structured and controlled. But
what is where do you think the more organic ones come from versus the sort of structured and controlled?
I think it usually happens with numbers that I've had a fair amount of time to prepare. So I've got the song, you know, secure in my memory, and I know exactly when I'm moving. How I also do a lot of costume changes on stage. So if that gets too technical, and I've not done it many times, I get quite, you know, worried about the technical aspects. Like, is that zipper gonna come off and things like this. But if you've done it a couple of times, you also know if something doesn't work, you can actually quite organically just take a detour and kind of make it work somehow. So I think that's kind of when it becomes a bit more organic.
How was it received in Iceland? We spoke a little bit about this. I'll just preface what I'm going to say, that Iceland traditionally is obviously a very macho culture. You know, the Vikings are obviously from there. Well, not from there. They arrived there at some point. You know, there's all these big, strong, you know, massive, strong men. Obviously, the world's strongest man, he comes from there as well. And you're taking your show and placing it in the center of this typically masculine, but also a very, I guess, liberal country as well. You know, it's a weird dichotomy, like to have these people that are considered the epitome of masculinity, but then to be a country that is also very open. How was it received when you were doing these shows?
It's funny. I just want to kind of say first that we've spoken about this before, and even then I thought it's quite a funny notion, because my first idea of Iceland was, of course, you have all those big, bulky, masculine Viking dudes, but at the same time, from the very beginning, I also saw how very empowered and strong women were in society and very publicly. So that's what was more of a kind of new thing to me, to live in a society where women have so much to say and are so much in control of many things. And there is of course that kind of macho element. We've also spoken about like domestic violence is quite high in compared to other countries where on a similar level of equality, I would say. So there
like
is
Sweden and Norway.
So there is this kind of dual aspect of in a way it's a very macho society, but you also have very powerful and strong women that will never have a man tell them anything, you know.
Where do you think that comes from, the sort of empowerment of the women there?
I'm not sure.
I'm thinking it's because they're still in touch with their old sort of pagan roots, where women had a prominent part in society as well as men. You know, they're very proud of their sort of Viking culture over there, obviously, and that seems where it stems from. I think Iceland had the first parliament in 990 or something like that.
Coming from Switzerland, where women couldn't vote until the late 70s.
We like these bloody Iceland, women that have all these rights over here.
Well, they actually invented democracy.
But they also have came up at a time where like the pagan religion was the main religion, but also sort of a parliament system, and that's a weird duality as well. You know, obviously that means that they're going to be, like you say, women are seen as sort of equal to men in all parts, but still there is, you know, this masculine side where there's domestic abuse going on, and that's I find it so funny with it. It feels like the same sort of, all countries must have these sort of dichotomies.
I guess so, yeah.
But one of the big ones is Japan, obviously. Very, you know, stern, the samurai method, where, you know, they're very methodical, everything's 100% businessmen and technology, but then there's this really seedy underworld to Japan, obviously. You know, there's lots of sexual abuse going on in trains, obviously the vending machines with, you know, used underwear in them. There's a weird thing like that, and that seems like quite similar to, not in the same way, but Iceland in a sense. Like they have this duality where, like you say, all these masculine men, but then they're such an open country as well. But not this sort of terrible parts of Japan, obviously.
Well, you know, there is terrible things about Iceland too.
Yeah, the fish, the fermented shark, I guess.
I've never had it. I managed to live there for 6 years without ever trying the.
I bet that's
shark.
One of the. I was going to ask you two questions that you probably get all the time. Have you tried the fermented shark? And have you met Björk?
I've met Björk a couple of times I've not had the shark, but I've met Björk.
Does everyone must have met her at one point?
Nowadays she lives away from Iceland most of the year. I want to say
is it Spain?
New York.
Okay, yeah.
The thing is,
she recorded her album in Spain,
I think
Homogenic, you know, the one after that, I can't remember, anyway.
Biophilia.
Yeah, I think she recorded,
to be honest, I'm not the biggest, no disrespect, but I'm not the biggest Björk fan, so I'm just not sure
you should
with
get out of here right now.
Well, no, but that's the thing, I love her for her you know, kind of. I love her for being a pioneer in musically, aesthetically, fashion-wise. But she was never. I have other people that just kind of gripped my attention more. For example, kind of my private Björk is Roisin Murphy from Moloko. She's kind of. She's my version of what Björk is to many people. So I know what it is, but I'm just not as well read. When it comes to her. So I don't know which album was recorded in what city, so I have no idea.
She's probably one of the very few celebs that if I met, I probably would sort of have a little fanboy crush over her if I've met her, because she's just, to me, some of her albums, not the newer stuff obviously, and correlating that with what she's wearing as well. Like, I'm not huge into fashion, but you can see that she has a lot of influence from like Japanese culture as well as the Icelandic culture. You know, she meshes those things so brilliantly, like the landscapes of Iceland. She uses traditional orchestras from Iceland and choirs in her music as well, but then has like techno in there, like European techno, and it's just like
she has a very eclectic field of influences, I think.
And Homogenic, that album is just I could listen to that on repeat.
I think I'm torn between Debut and Homogenic being my favorite ones. But that's the thing, I think her later stuff kind of it gets a bit too,
I think
it's a bit too artsy. She loses me. She doesn't get my attention. Or like,
do you think that's with age though?
I don't know.
Do you think if she'd done that back in the day, we would have just thought, oh yeah, that's amazing because she's this young sort of woman who's doing this thing from Iceland, but because she's older now, like the same with David Bowie, like he just blew everyone's mind back in the day. He was androgynous as well, you know, there's lots of stories. Some of the stuff he made, especially in the 70s, Spiders from Mars, but his later stuff, because he was an older man, you just didn't really think it was mind-blowing.
I'm not sure. Maybe it is. I also think musically that some of the early works are just a bit more musically pleasing to me, or like my personal taste in music. Whereas the more experimental stuff, I find it interesting, but kind of hard to follow or hard to stick with.
Pretentious, maybe.
Maybe it's I don't know. Possibly.
You can say that.
It is a bit pretentious.
That'll be my headline for this podcast. Björk is pretentious.
Go ahead.
But she's amazing as well.
I was gonna say earlier. It's many of the situations that I've met her in, it would be quite difficult to have a fanboy fit, because if you just sit next to her in the pool and you're both in swimwear and she's there as like a very regular woman with that no makeup, no crazy outfits, nothing.
That's right. You
sit there and you get a bit, get a bit nervous because like, oh my God, I'm sitting right next to Björk, but it's still not not in any way a situation where you would go up and have a speech about how inspiring she is, because she's just a regular woman in a bikini.
Well, everyone's a regular person, I think I spoke about this on the podcast before. One of the times I met one of my idols, was a guitar idol. I was really into my guitar at the time. I was 16, 17, and it's and a guy came named Zakk Wylde. He's a guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne during the 80s and on to the 90s.
But Black Sabbath guitarist?
No,
Ozzy?
That was before. Yeah, Ozzy later on, and I just idolized this guy, and then I met him, and then I never ever got awestruck ever again over any other celeb, because when I met him, I was just like, you're just a normal guy, like all the rest of us, and I never. It's weird, like I just don't get like that with anyone. Is there anyone that you've met that you kind of went that way with, maybe, or you think you would go with if you met them?
I've never been a person that kind of walks up to famous people very easily. I've always been kind of, you know, especially when I lived in London, I saw a lot of actors in the street all the time, and I always thought to myself, they're off duty. I'm not gonna go and bother them because I know I'm not really gonna have that much of just a picture. I for me it was more like, oh my god, I saw them in the street. That was almost as much worth as having a photo, an awkward selfie.
Yeah. When selfies didn't exist.
But exactly. Well, yeah. I think they started becoming a thing, but it wasn't like nowadays you see people everywhere. Selfie sticks were not a thing yet.
Just really long arms.
But I had it was in 2015, just kind of a couple of months before the whole drag thing really started kicking off in Reykjavik, where some of the queens from RuPaul's Drag Race came to Reykjavik for a show. Wow. It was kind of a part of their after, you know, when the season's over, they put all of them in a plane and just drive them around the world.
Can you just hold on to that thought for 2 seconds?
Yeah, sure.
So yes, RuPaul.
Well, so yeah, they came to Reykjavik for part of their tour. And I happened to have a meet and greet ticket, so we went there early, and nothing drag, just a bit of makeup.
This is in Reykjavik.
But that's before James started happening, and even before our monthly shows started happening. But right before. And I went there, and Alaska Thunderfuck was there, and she's one of my big drag race inspirations. Okay. You know, drag isn't defined by Drag Race, but it's heavily influenced nowadays by Drag Race. It's become such a big phenomenon. But she was there, and I walked up to her, and I couldn't even say anything. I was just completely frozen. Whereas my then boyfriend, he did all the talking, and he was funny and charming. And I was like, God damn it, she doesn't even mean so much to you. Why are you now the one being fucking funny and charming? And I stand here, you know, twisting my thumbs. But I think because of that situation, and then also immediately after that, kind of starting to do that same thing myself, I started thinking about this so much more. And I think if I would meet her again, or anyone else that's equally famous or important for me, I don't think I would have such a moment anymore, because I felt so silly afterwards. Kind of, especially then, kind of doing my own drag and seeing people coming up to me and not knowing what to say.
Playing in bands when I was younger, I always used to get like sort of embarrassed when people would come up and say, "Oh, great show." You know, I felt like I was like it wasn't worth. Not that it wasn't worthy of that, but I just didn't think I was a person for anyone to come up to and be like, "Oh, this is an amazing set that you all had." You know, I want to shake your hand, or even an autograph would just freak me out, because it doesn't seem like something anyone should be asking me for, you know. And like you're saying, like, I don't think I would ever get that way with anyone ever after I met my guitar idol, obviously. Do you think RuPaul's had a big part in sort of bringing drag to the forefront?
I think you know, drag has a much older history than just the existence of Drag Race, but I think he or she is doing quite a good job at bringing a lot of traditional elements and kind of the history of our culture into the TV show, because it's but I think that the biggest kind of contribution of the TV show is to make it so widely spread, and kind of it's become a mainstream phenomenon, which it definitely wasn't until, let's say, 10 years ago. That's when the show started, but it probably took a couple of years for it to actually have that effect on people.
Do you know what the main demographic is that watch RuPaul?
I would probably say gays and girls in their 20s or teenagers. But to be honest, I don't know worldwide. I think I might also kind of refer to our demographic of, who comes to our shows.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about the macho culture earlier, and none of those burly guys come to our shows.
Really? So, I was going to ask, like, who comes to the shows? Is it mainly sort of...
We have a lot of young girls, let's say between 15 and 25. Okay. Even though the ones between 15 and 18 have difficulties coming into the show, because Iceland is relatively strict with allowing, I think it's maybe even 20. It's like drinking age is 20, and so you're not supposed to be in establishments that sell alcohol after probably 8 o'clock or something. So insane. They have difficulties coming to our late night shows.
Right, okay. Yeah.
But we have other venues in Reykjavik by now that do earlier shows that are child friendly, and
that's cool.
There is ways to come and see us do our thing.
So it's not just like an X-rated show for, like a late night crowd. It's just
even though like a lot of it is good that it's X-rated.
Why do you think it is predominantly sort of young women that come to it? Do you think it's a safety thing? Like maybe they feel like they're not going to get bothered?
A lot of my straight female friends have told me that before, that they like to come. I'm just gonna give the place a shout out because they're doing an amazing job.
Goikurin. Okay.
Goikurin is a bar in downtown Reykjavik.
How do you spell that?
That's GAUKURINN.
Okay.
I think.
Check it out, folks.
Yes. Goikurin, it means cuckoo in Icelandic. And it's one of those places. It's not a gay bar or it's nothing specific, but they're just open to pretty much anyone who is not a judgmental asshole. That's pretty much what it says over their door.
No judgment.
Everyone welcome but assholes.
Okay.
And then they have like a wee list of what
people that are
defines
not allowed
an asshole. And I think especially those nights when we have our shows, that the whole atmosphere is very welcoming and safe. Okay. So a lot of girls enjoy coming there because they know they don't have to worry about, I don't know,
people bothering them. Yeah.
People bothering them, whether it's physically or just verbally. But because you have that happening in Reykjavik, especially also from tourists who have that old notion of Icelandic women being loose and easy to get.
Or if it takes like someone to be very forward to then get a woman, that's the thing is, notion,
There was an airline, I don't remember which one it was. I probably shouldn't say a name anyway.
Sorry, we're getting attacked from a moped.
There was some kind of an ad campaign maybe 10 years, 15 years ago that kind of portrayed Iceland as the Thailand of the North.
Wow,
or,
really?
Come to Reykjavik for an easy night with an Icelandic girl.
An airline? An
airline seriously doing that. And it was taken down quite immediately.
Imagine
but
if that came out
spread
now.
Out, and that kind of idea stuck with people's minds, and you still have people coming. So where can I go and get the easy girls? And everybody's just standing around. You're in the wrong place, dude.
That is insane that happens on that level. In a place still that's sort of open-minded.
Exactly.
Would you say it's mostly tourist, or is it?
Yeah. No local has that idea.
Okay.
Because if you live there, that's not the case. But that's something.
And do you get a percentage of straight guys coming to your shows?
Yeah, we have a fair share. I quite often have girls coming to me telling me that I confused their boyfriends, which is usually I think that's one of my favorite compliments when lesbians or straight boys get confused by me. Then I know that I'm doing something right.
It's the beard. That's what's confusing them, probably.
Well.
Yeah, that's so cool that you're part of creating a scene. Well, not making a scene bigger, you know, and sustaining it in a time, you know, that's sort of.
Well, we didn't create the scene or invent it, but we gave it a vessel in a way. We gave an idea a vessel that was more of a thought for quite a while, because a lot of the people that used to be active a couple of years ago, they've calmed down, grown too old, or just moved away to other places where they were more active, and so it kind of went into hibernation, and we just, you know, breathed life back into this idea.
So obviously the world is obviously in a place just now where there's a lot of turmoil with gender politics and like PC, you know, sexism and all these things, and everyone's very on edge at the moment. Did you ever incur negative reactions to what you're doing on any level?
Let me just quickly go through my memories. I think personally, not really. Okay. Maybe people that had challenging questions or felt kind of, you know, provoked in a way, but not to the point where they would be angry about it, but more like, so your stuff is kind of bringing up questions, and I want them answered, and it's maybe more like a conversation starter than. But I've heard from other people that I was working with, or, you know, around three corners maybe, that it can offend people, but they usually don't have a very good, you know, set of arguments as to why they're offended. I think most of us do it in the most respectable way possible, because I think it's also quite important that you don't just go on about, you know, even though we have very humoristic approaches to what is gender and what are females and what are males and what we do, none of us are trying to take the piss of womanhood or what it is being a woman these days. So I believe that all the people I've been working with so far are doing quite a, you know,
a good thing.
Are being respectful, but there is still people that might be so easily offended that even this, you know, nowadays people get offended quite quickly. But I'm always someone who kind of, I think people should not be so sensitive.
No, of course.
Even though, you know, speaking about those sensitivities is important.
No, of course. You have to.
The discourse has to continue happening, but
that's the thing. There has to be discourse. I've spoken about this numerous times. Even though you're offended, that doesn't mean you're right. And
let's talk about it. I'm down to having a conversation. But if you just, you know, throw an insult in my face because you got offended, maybe you didn't come to the right place, honey. And they start using divisive terms to sort of shut down conversation, you know, and that's not healthy either, because we can't stop talking, and a lot of the stuff that's going on in America on college campuses is used to stop people from talking, exactly. And that's not healthy on any side of the argument, you know. Do you feel that when people ask you questions that you feel like you have to sort of answer it because you feel like a sort of a patron of what you're doing and where you're at? Do you feel like you have to just give them an answer, or is it just sometimes can it be quite tiresome? I think it really depends what the question is about and which topics it touches, because sometimes I feel I'm in a position to answer, or like my own experience and my opinion is valid, and sometimes I clearly am not, and then I would also just tell them that they're talking to the wrong person, because there's simply nothing that I can say coming from where I come from, you know, especially when I think one of the gray areas where you have to be quite careful nowadays is when it comes to, I'm probably going to use terms that are offensive.
You can swear on this show.
It's not about swearing.
To someone it's swearing.
But like those terms that kind of where people can be quite particular what exactly you mean. But when you know, transgender people or the whole kind of gender fluid,
trans, you know,
non-binary,
gender fluid
people get quite picky these days with what term you use, and I never know if I'm doing it right or if I'm using something horribly offensive, but I always feel like that's something I cannot talk about so much because that's absolutely not connected. Like, you know, those people have always been part of, I even feel horrible saying those people because they're, I guess it's a very neutral way to say, but they have always been very heavily, you know, linked with drag culture. So it's not a thing that's new to me, but I'm a man dressing up a couple of times on a stage. So that I really don't come from a place where I can.
But I don't know. I think
speak about
drag has paved the way for a lot of things to be accepted in society. You know, it's been a vehicle to sort of show that gender can be, you know, the lines can be blurred and not everyone just fits into the sort of I'm a girl, well, I'm a woman and you're a man sort of thing. And it's always happened on a scale that is big enough for people to sort of then be aware of it. You know, it is a thing that I think is a good job that for people are doing.
Well, the thing is, especially with drag and the whole trans aspect, I think the big difference there is that for me it's not a question of identity, because I'm okay with my identity, but I play around.
You're performing.
Whereas for a trans person, it's very much a question of identity. So they are much more, you know, it's like an existential thing in a way. Whereas for me, if somebody would tell me never to dress up again, I wouldn't be happy, but I would be able to. Yeah. I would probably not follow the rule, but I would be able to go through life without being suppressed or having something existential taken away from me.
Was it something you were getting paid for when you were doing it, or was it just something that you loved doing?
Let's just say I didn't get paid enough to do it for money. It pays off a little bit, but I personally never got to the point where it would pay my bills.
Did it feel like you were doing something special? Like, when you were on there, you were like, yeah, this is something that we're showing the world that this is something that's fun? And
normally not while I'm on stage, or it's more about the feedback you get from the crowd, either during the gig or after, when you kind of hear from people that, you know, well, basically, if people are grateful for you giving them whatever you have given them, then you kind of feel like, oh, maybe there is something to what we do. It's not just plain entertainment, but it has substance. Because I've heard from many people that coming to our shows is inspiring to them and gives them, you know, kind of confidence that they didn't have before. So in a way, yes, but I think I would go too far saying that I go on stage thinking I'm doing something important now. Okay, yeah. You know.
And how come that you came away from it? Was it just you felt like it was something that was the end of that part of your life? Not drag as a whole, but just being in Reykjavik and doing it on stage. What?
It was time for change. Yeah. Reykjavik has been my home for the last 6 years, and it's still if I speak of Reykjavik, I speak of home. So that's like, it's become my home base.
So it's a lot of years, you know, to be in one place as well.
But I think it's just, I've gotten to a point in my life where Reykjavik, I needed to kind of break out to maybe, you know, go back and appreciate it more again.
Come away from it and see it for what it is.
Sometimes when you're a bit too close to something, you don't really see it for what it is, and you stop appreciating.
Can't see the wood for the forest.
Exactly.
One of the things, sorry, just to bring back to Switzerland and facts, one of the old name for Switzerland, Helveta,
what is
Helveta?
Well, I
because is that not a swear word in Swedish as well?
Helvetis.
It's like the old word for...
It's close. So I'm not sure how it's called in English, but the Latin term is Helvetia.
Yeah.
And that's going back to a Germanic tribe.
So it's the female
Helvetians.
national personification of Switzerland.
Well, that's Helvetia.
Right.
That's like Britannia
in
Britain.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay.
But she's, Britannia is
the
goes back to the name of the country, whereas so does Helvetia. But the name of the country goes back to a Germanic or it's a tribe of, I think they were Germanic.
Confederatio Helvetica.
It's like the Latin name
is the nation's full Latin name, and is derived from the Celtic Helveti.
Celtic, there we go.
Helveti, or Helvetii, or that's probably too Latin. People who first entered the area around 100 BC. Wow, that's because there is a Swedish swear word called Helveta, and I thought it was just them cursing
in Icelandic.
Oh,
yeah. Which basically refers to hell.
Yeah, really.
And I think isn't Helvetia just with one L, whereas all the Nordic swear words,
is double L.
Like hell in English is double L. I think that's the distinction.
And you've got like sort of pagan tattoos. Is that something that you've been? Is that when you went to Iceland? Is it something that you became part of, or is it something you've always been fascinated?
I've always liked runes. And it's basically, it's actually from the Anglo-Saxon runic alphabet. So it's not technically Viking runes, but Anglo-Saxon runes.
Okay. Is that like lost, sort of like this lost language? I can't remember what they were called, but I've seen them before. Yeah, there's like a double P, I think I've seen before that you get in the English one. Yeah, but they're slightly different from the.
There is some are kind of the same, and then there's different ones, and it depends which which people used it for what use. And there is many different runic alphabets and different ways of using them. Yeah.
And you've also got the one in there. That's the one I want. I'm gonna get this tattoo actually. Is it the Traveler one? The stave? What's it called again?
Kind of. I
think Björk has it as well.
Right. She has this one on her arm.
Yeah, I know. One. That's the one I want.
Well, this is a runic compass.
Yes.
And it's
for
like
travelers.
It's like a runic spell to help you or to keep you from getting lost in the darkness and bad weather or something. And it's
called
Vegvisir.
Yeah. That's
which
means, I want to get this.
Which means how do you call that? The signs leading you the way.
Oh,
like street signs or
street sign,
but not
signpost.
Signposts, like the ones with an arrow on it. This way to Grass Market.
But and I always find them just so. I don't know. There's something so amazing about it because it's obviously 2018, but we also have this link to ancient societies and civilizations in the form of a picture, in a rune that you can't decipher unless you know where it came from, and it's just the whole thing around it's just amazing.
Mystical and kind of
like even if I had it on my body, I would feel just sort of akin to it somehow. Like you're part of something. Obviously, someone had tattoos like that on their body at some time, back in the. Have you ever heard of Heilung?
Heilung?
It's a band. They're from Denmark. They're amazing. They do traditional sort of Germanic. I'm
just wondering if it's just a matter of
translation
or like how it's pronounced, or if I heard someone.
Is Heilung?
Oh, Heilung. That's funny because Heilung is a German word.
Amazing band. They have a whole.
They're Danish though.
Yeah, Danish, but they speak in like old Germanic. Amazing. Like all their costumes.
Heilung means healing.
Yeah.
In German.
Yeah.
But it might also be Danish.
But they use a lot of like obviously Swedish and Scandinavian in their music, but they also in some of the songs they speak in old German as well.
I have to look it up.
They're amazing. Heilung. This is one of their live shows. Look at that. Like they have such an epic look about them as well. But what they're doing has been done by a bunch of other bands, and it's cheesy the way they do it. This band are like legit.
They do it right.
Legit. Like they've only released one album, and they're not doing any touring. They're just been to a couple of festivals.
Cool.
So check them out.
It looks definitely interesting. So Heilung.
I think you've got it right there. For anyone listening as well, Heilung. Yeah. I'll let you listen to them after the podcast. Yeah, sure. Actually. Yeah, we should probably wrap it up there.
All right.
Yeah, because
was it?
I have to go. It's 10 to 7.
Oh wow.
Yeah, no, it's not even 2 hours though. Like we could have went on for longer, I guess. Yeah, I have to go and meet someone, my girlfriend actually. We're going to see, Brewdog. Like we're going to their bar in the other end of Edinburgh. So
well, the Grass Market one.
Yeah,
that's a nice one.
Have you been? I've not been because obviously we're drinking.
We're drinking Brewdog, and Brewdog is actually for the past couple of years, it's been very present in Iceland.
No way.
Brewdog beers are quite big, especially Punk IPA is a big seller.
It's the only one I drank as well.
Yeah. And they just now opened their first actual Brewdog only bar in Reykjavik. Yeah. Just like a week or two after I moved to Edinburgh, which is kind of ironic.
Just to sort of end this, I usually ask a few questions sometimes. First one's like favorite book that you've read.
Perfume. Patrick Süskind, the guy that kills people to get their smell.
Ah, really?
That's always been number one since I read it. That's just
I've not read it.
Nothing compares.
Okay. How old is that one? When's it from?
It's fairly new. It's a postmodern book, so it's he's still alive. He's still writing. Maybe in the 90s somewhere. Okay. To be honest, I'm not sure when it was released. I probably should know because it's my favorite book.
And that's the one that sticks out in your mind.
Well, it's just I used to read a lot, and in the last couple of years, I've become quite bad with reading. Yeah. I enjoy it, but I never find time to actually sit down. So it's just become some kind of a hassle.
Yeah.
But Perfume has always been. It's just written in such a fascinating way because it basically describes the whole world in smells and not pictures like what we're used to.
Yeah.
And it's just twists your brain. It's fantastic.
Favorite movie all time or one you've seen recently?
The one that jumps to mind, maybe also because I just watched it very recently, is Almost Famous.
Right,
because it's about
that's the band from the 70s.
Yeah, the boy following the band around.
What is the girl called from it? She's
Goldie Hudson.
Yeah, she's brilliant in that. That's such a brilliant movie.
She's magical.
That's a brilliant movie.
It's very moody, and I think I always wish that I would have been alive at that time.
Yeah.
I think that.
Well, when I was in bands when I was younger, that's always the epic time because there was less rules, I guess, for when you play at gigs. Like obviously there's health and safety parts in that movie where he gets electrocuted from the microphone. Like that would never happen.
Exactly.
And just the touring on a bus and the bit of touring I did, the best thing about it was being in a van with 5 of your best friends. Just you feel sort of almost free in a way, like you can just do what you want. You're going to go from city to city to city. You play to make money to be able to go to the next city. It's very
seems magical.
Yeah, it's like hand and mouth sort of thing. It's amazing. So that's why I love that. That's a good movie. Favorite quote?
Oh God. I can never think of anything smart when I probably anything wild, like Oscar Wilde. God.
It can be anything though.
There is something about looking up to the stars from the gutter, but I can't.
I'll Google this just to make sure.
something, but pretty much anything wild, whether he meant it seriously or he was just joking. I think he was quite
from the gutter. Yeah,
something about looking at the stars.
He said, the quote is, "We're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars."
Right, there we go.
Okay. And it comes from Windermere's fan, Lady Windermere's fan. Okay. It was a play he wrote early on in his career. Cool. So yeah, is that where the quote you're going for?
Whenever somebody asks me for a quote, I always think I should probably say something wild because he just has so many good
He's
quotes.
very quotable.
Oh, I'm just thinking about it. Can you look that up as well about wearing black? It's Yoji Yamamoto black. It's
oh wow.
But he basically describes why he likes black because it's.
Are you talking about the
Japanese designer?
Oh, okay. Yuji Yamamoto.
And he just has this famous quote about why black is so amazing. About it being modest but confident at the same time, or like you have to look it up.
So Yuji Yamamoto.
Yoji Yamamoto.
How do you spell the first one? Do you know?
Oh shit. YOJI. And then YAMA. YAMOTO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Black is modest and arrogant at the same time. Black is lazy, and black is easy but mysterious. But above all, black says this: I don't bother you, don't bother me.
I love it.
And the picture that I'm reading from, he also is wearing all black.
He's famous for wearing all black, and his collections are mostly black as well, especially early stuff.
I wonder if they ever said why Johnny Cash always only wore black? Because he was the man in black. I'll just Google this just to sort of go with the black
and while
theme.
you do, I'm thinking maybe we should put in a RuPaul quote to tie it up. So we have literature, fashion, and drag.
Okay, so he basically was saying it was in a song. He told people why he wore black, but he basically says he wears black for the poor and the beaten down, living in the hopeless, hungry side of town. I wear it for the prisoner who was long paid for his crime, but is there because he's the victim of times. So he's basically just an ode to where he came from, I guess. Okay.
RuPaul. I mean, she has so many catchphrases, but I'd probably have to go with something cheesy, like if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love somebody else?
I just googled RuPaul quote.
She finishes every single episode with that, so that's kind of
the top one was
the big one, yeah.
And another one, we're all born naked, and the rest is drag. I think
you can probably begin, and I can finish them without reading, because I
when you become the image of your own imagination.
Ooh, you caught me on the spot.
It's the most powerful thing you can ever do.
Yeah. That's a bit more obscure, that one. She doesn't say that in every episode.
If you feel like you're being sabotaged by your inner saboteur. So she's basically saying...
Yeah, that's something she always says, but she says it in different ways.
Okay.
Or like, she has different ways of putting that message out. But it's always whenever somebody feels like they're being attacked or sabotaged, that's always the first thing she says. But
it's just like, oh, poor me type
you.
of thing. Yeah, it's all on you.
Or you letting it happen.
Yeah.
It's up to you if you want to give them the power to do so.
Yeah, that's cool.
Much.
It seems like it's quite empowering. If people want to find you on a social media that you want to be followed on, where would be appropriate?
I guess there isn't that much information, but mostly pictures on Instagram.
Okay.
And I have a Facebook page, but that one I've actually just recently realized that I haven't been very active. It used to be more like I promoted shows and just but I'm sharing less pictures or information there. That's more like an information channel, whereas I think if you want to see me and glimpses of my life and things that I'm about to do, I think Insta is probably
seems like the one that you're most active on.
And there is for the crazy interested fans, there is a link to my Facebook on my Insta.
Okay. Is there anything you want to plug as well?
Yeah, let's do Insta. That's in terms of projects.
Yeah, just anything to do with what you've been doing.
I'm flying back to Reykjavik in 3 weeks to do a show.
Wow.
but I'm not sure how much point there is on a Scottish podcast to promote an Icelandic show.
I think we have some Icelandic listeners.
Okay.
That one.
One. Whoever you are. Hey.
Yeah, so.
No, but I'm stuff here in Edinburgh is in the works.
Okay.
I haven't got anything completely finalized yet, but I'm in the process of connecting with the local scene and local people, and there is definitely soon gonna be stuff happening. Festivals coming up.
Okay.
They have shows at Paradise Palms. They
really?
have drag shows. So
wow.
I might even be seen at Paradise Palms.
Wow. It's been great to have you on. Yeah. And you should come back on. We'll get longer the next time. Yeah. I'm just a little bit pushed for time. Sorry, guys.
That's fine.
But yeah.
Is there a link for my Insta, or should I quickly just say the name?
You can say it, but like I'll just you can say it. So
I wasn't sure if you're gonna tag it or
no, that's fine. You can say it as well.
Well, it's JamestheCreature.
Okay. And everyone check them out because there's some awesome drag show pictures as well.
It's fabulous.
Peace.